I spent 4 years of my life taking care of my dying father. I moved back into my childhood bedroom, gave up my apartment, missed 2 of my best friend's biggest life events. Also, he wouldn't have to go into a care facility. My brother visited twice in those 4 years. When the will was finally read, the house, the savings, almost everything went to him. I got $11,000 and a single handwritten sentence that took me weeks to actually understand. That sentence is the reason I'm telling you this story at all. My name is Megan. I'm 34. My dad, Robert, raised my brother, Chase, and me mostly on his own after our mom passed when I was 16. He wasn't a perfect father, but he was steady, the kind of dad who showed up to every school event, even exhausted from double shifts at the plant. When he was diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's 5 years ago, I was the one who started driving up on weekends. Within a year, weekends turned into moving back into my old bedroom entirely, giving up an apartment I loved and a job I could no longer commute to. I picked up freelance work instead, enough to get by, because somebody needed to be there full-time. Chase lived 9 hours away, had a demanding finance job, a family of his own. I understood, mostly, why day-to-day care fell to me. What I struggled with was the 2 visits in 4 years, one Christmas, one 36-hour trip the following spring. Phone calls were sparse too, always ending right as I started describing how Dad was actually doing. The disease progressed slower than expected for 3 years, then much faster in the 4th. By the final year, Dad had good days and increasingly difficult ones, stretches of real confusion, sometimes not recognizing which decade he thought he was living in. It was during that final year that Chase visited, more than the previous 3 years combined. 3 trips in about 5 months, each one scheduled, notably, right when I mentioned Dad was having a harder stretch. I remember feeling almost grateful at the time. I told myself he was finally stepping up. Looking back now, I think about how each visit lined up with Dad's more confused periods, and how Chase always asked for a few hours alone with him, saying he wanted uninterrupted time before it became impossible. I never once questioned that. Why would I have? Dad passed in March, peacefully, at home. About 3 weeks later, our lawyer called us both in for the will reading. I wasn't expecting an even split necessarily. I wasn't prepared for almost everything going to Chase: the house, the retirement savings, his truck. I received $11,000 from a small separate account and a sealed envelope in Dad's increasingly shaky handwriting. Inside was a single line, *Megan, ask Chase what he told me about you. I'm sorry I believed it. Love you always, Dad, *. I sat with that sentence for almost 2 weeks before I understood I needed to actually investigate it, not just grieve it. Going through Dad's filing cabinet later, looking for old tax documents, I found something I wasn't looking for. An earlier will drawn up 4 years prior, right after his diagnosis, back when he was still completely lucid. That version split everything evenly. The new will, the one leaving nearly everything to Chase, was signed and notarized just 6 weeks before Dad died, 6 weeks after Chase's 3rd and final visit that year. I called Chase and read him Dad's note word for word. Long pause. I don't know what that means, he said. Too quickly. I told him about the old will, about the timeline, about 6 weeks. He got defensive fast, said I was twisting a grieving, confused old man's note into a conspiracy, said Dad brought up changing the will himself, wanting to make things right. After years of guilt that I'd given up my whole life while he'd built a career elsewhere, I asked him directly, what did you tell Dad about me? The pause this time was longer. I told him you resented him. Chase finally said that you complained about being stuck there, that you'd probably put him in a home the second you inherited enough to just walk away. None of that was true. Not one word. He was scared and confused near the end, Chase said. I just made sure he understood who was actually going to take care of him. That's not manipulation. That's making sure he made a smart decision. I don't think Chase has ever once called it what it actually was. I spoke to an elder law attorney 2 weeks later. She explained that Will signed during documented cognitive decline, especially ones dramatically reversing a much earlier, clearly lucid version, can sometimes be challenged under undue influence, proving someone close to a vulnerable person manipulated their decisions for personal benefit. She was honest these cases are difficult and expensive, especially against a sibling. She also said Dad's note, in his own handwriting, naming the exact situation almost like he suspected something even in his confusion, was about as strong a starting piece of evidence as she'd seen. I haven't decided if I'm actually filing anything. Part of me just wants to grieve my father without a year of courtrooms. Part of me can't stop thinking about what it cost him, in whatever clarity he had left, to write that apology down. Chase and I haven't spoken since that call. I don't know if we ever will again. He didn't just say he was sorry in that note. He told me to ask asterisk. Some part of him, even confused, wanted me to find the truth eventually. That might be the only inheritance that actually meant something. Would you file the lawsuit or walk away and keep the peace? Tell me below. I genuinely still don't know which is right. Asterisk part 2. If I decide to contest it, depends on how this goes.